Oh, wait, I see it. Yep. All right. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and share it. All right. All right.
All right, we up and running.
All right.
How you doing, guys? What's going on, everybody? All right, we're going to start in a second. We just want to make sure everybody is able to have opportunity to please share this on your page. We have the opportunity for Dr. Idries and Dr. Jamil. They're here from Twin Doctors TV. I put it in the post as well. Please like and share as much as you can. You know that we want to be able to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get the information that we're going to talk about today. So just give us a few seconds. You know, a lot of groups that we do post in, I just want to make sure everybody gets get this in their groups for sure. So we're here right now. I know Latoya is on. She's sharing in our trading room as well. But I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. That's why I'm on my phone here real quick, and I'm gonna share it to our groups that we normally post in. All right, we go here. So how you guys doing today so far? How's it going?
Well. We're doing well. The day is young, but we are doing well.
Well, I'm on call. So I'm still working. He's off this week, so he's doing really, really well.
Yeah.
But
We had a good night's sleep last night, which is a rarity. I will take it when I get it.
Kind of jealous. I did not, but that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So we just want to say thank you, first of all, for coming here. For those who do know what we do, we have a stock market trading and education company. So our main goal is for people to understand how to understand the different financial markets and things of that nature. And throughout this whole situation, as an education company, our main concern is for people to be educated no matter what. And, you know, we are a minority-based company. We contribute a lot to different organizations just on financial awareness, you know, for our people in general, and just for all nationalities, just in general. And once this stuff has hit us very hard, there's a big shift. Like we always like to say, you can't have generational wealth without generational health. Like what's the point? Mm-hmm. And especially amongst our community, you know, you guys and other doctors of minority background can be a rarity to our community, right? Yeah. And what happens is our whole goal, no matter what we're trying to do, we're trying to upbuild ourselves, our generation. And if we start losing doctors, we start losing nurses and things of that nature, it's like, what else is going to happen? Because many of us may not, we're working financially to improve ourselves so our generations can become maybe doctors, lawyers, or who are professionals. Yeah. In order to be able to strive from generation after generation. So it's like everything comes to a halt at this point to see what can we do to protect ourselves, because money, and I know this from experience in finances, doesn't change ignorance if you don't know, because if you don't know, you don't know. So
it may magnify it, because when you have money, people are afraid to speak truth to you sometimes and educate you more. So.
I was going to say, not to get political, but our prime example is what's in the White House right now. Money does not come with intelligence or understanding or empathy. So you are absolutely correct.
Correct. And that's what we're seeing. And the focus right now is a lot of us are still on that mindset of opportunities. Mm-hmm. And I'm with that. You know, we all trying to benefit. You know, we're looking for opportunities when this market turns around, whether real estate or stock market, or, hey, I can get a nice business loan, or I can get this stimulus. But at the end of the day, we have an alarming rate of our people dying.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is very
alarming rate
Absolutely.
of our people dying. So the question is, I want to ask you, and when we're talking about, what do you see actually taking place, since you guys are more behind the scenes of what's actually going on, and uh, what do you see that's alarming or imperative for us to know as a community?
So, I think the most alarming thing for me is, I've got a prime example. So I was working last night on labor and delivery, and I got a call from one of the nurses. She said, "Hey, I want to let you know that this patient that was here last week, we got her COVID test and it was positive. Now we kind of suspected that she was positive. So we treated her as, a PY, person under investigation. So we did the gowning up and we had her in isolation and things like that. But the point of the story was it took us 10 days. She was tested on March 30th. We got her results on April 10th. It took us 10 days. And so I think what is most alarming to me is A, that testing is not readily available, and B, once people are tested, the results are not immediately available. So this is somebody who was in the community for at least 10 days, more, at least probably 2 or 3 weeks, with a positive COVID test, with her family, with her children, with her new baby at the grocery store. And she just didn't know, because when I saw her at the hospital, she actually felt pretty well. And so what's alarming me is the inavailability of testing, the time it takes to get a result when someone is tested, and the fact that people can be both asymptomatic, meaning they've got no symptoms, or minimally symptomatic, meaning they think they have a cold or something else. And this is a highly virulent virus. It is very contagious. So when you have it, you are going to spread it. And so that is what's most alarming to me, because I think people are taking the stay-at-home orders and the quarantine pretty seriously, but I still see a lot of people out and about kind of doing their thing, And I think because people don't know how prevalent this virus is, how contagious this virus is, people aren't taking it seriously. And because it is prevalent, because it is contagious, and because getting tested is hard and a long process, I can see this really exploding and getting worse over the next few weeks and potentially even months. And so that's what's really concerning to me. So my main message to people is to really, you can't be in the house 24/7, I understand that, but really take these stay-at-home orders seriously. When I'm blessed enough to be off for the weekend and I'm just sitting at home chilling, binging Netflix, this can seem like it's another world away. But then when I go back to work Monday morning, I'm like, oh no, this is here and this is real, And so I want people to understand, like, please do kind of escape, binge your Netflix, but stay at home and just realize this is a real thing and it is very contagious. And unfortunately, the resources aren't there to test or necessarily even treat everybody if people were to all come down at the same time.
And I think, I think the thing that concerns me most is the relationship between the care that people receive and subconscious bias or unconscious bias, right? And so, you talk about building generational wealth and how important a strong community is to doing something like that. And I think that the operative word there is community. And a community is a group of people that looks out for themselves and takes care of one another, right? And so the reality is that the people who are most likely to fall ill from COVID or potentially to die from COVID are people who are a little bit older, who already have some comorbidities. And oftentimes they're the ones who are taking this stay-at-home order seriously, so they're staying home. But the people who aren't necessarily taking it as seriously are the people who are a little bit younger, feel a little bit better, a little bit healthier, fewer comorbidities. And they're going out and they're doing their thing, and they're maybe coming home with it, and they may be asymptomatic carriers. There's some estimates that up to 80% of people have been exposed. Most of them are probably asymptomatic carriers, don't feel sick, never will feel sick, but may give it to members of their community who are more at risk. And so when you talk about community and the strength of community and building community and the importance of community and generational wealth, one part of that is sacrifice. And so we all have to sacrifice to one another, even though this may not get me, this may not kill me, this may not even make me feel sick. I need to realize that there are members of my community who it will potentially be a serious thing for. And also as a community, we need to recognize the role of subconscious and unconscious bias in the healthcare that we receive. We work with a lot of fantastic doctors, nurses, people who are the salt of the earth. But all people, good, bad, and indifferent, are subject to unconscious bias. And unconscious bias plays a large role in the care that we receive. And so we need to realize that we need to do our best to protect ourselves, because once you get into a system, you are going to be subjected to variables like unconscious bias that may ultimately affect the care you receive, the outcome that you're subjected to. And these aren't people who consciously are aware of the fact that they may be viewing you differently, treating you differently. When people present with any condition, it's their symptoms that you use to a large extent to determine how sick they may or may not be, how sick they look to you, And subconsciously, people tend to think that Black and brown people aren't necessarily as sick as they may actually be. And so, you need to realize that once you get into a system, you're subject to these variables that aren't necessarily in your control. So the things you can control are, doing the things that are less likely to result in you getting exposed to this disease to begin with. And that means staying home and social distancing and proper hygiene and things of that nature. But
because I was gonna say, unfortunately, and I think anybody that's watching the news kind of knows this now, but people with, what they call comorbid medical conditions. So you have other conditions, diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, asthma, things like that. And these are conditions that, because of social inequities that are generations, long, but these are conditions that African Americans are at a higher risk for. Okay, sorry, let me just, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you. Good.
Okay, so these are conditions that African Americans are at risk for, or at higher risk for, and so when it comes to just baseline risk for coronavirus, for COVID-19 infection and illness, African Americans and people of color in general are at a higher risk, and so I think, and I'll tell you, I was reading a study that came out, or it wasn't really not a study, it's more of an observation. It was in the New York Times, and they were talking about, again, what anybody that's watching the news knows, but that people of color are 4 times as likely, 4 times. So this is something that, statistically speaking, you can't kind of say, oh, it's just, it's just a thing that happened with the stats. No, this is statistically significant. 4 times more likely to have serious illness and to die from COVID. And if you were watching, the presidential briefing yesterday was saying how we got to figure out why this is going on and blah, blah, blah. But you are 4 times more likely, if you're a person of color, to have serious illness or to die as a result of COVID-19. And so while I think everybody needs to take this seriously, because this is a social issue, it's a pandemic, especially those of us that are higher risk, so people of color, African Americans, brown people, we need to be taking this seriously, and both in terms of the stay-at-home orders, of quarantine, and in terms of seeking care if you feel like you're ill or exposed.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think amongst us as a minority community, our demographics are different. Like even this campaign that we're trying to do, I got 3 calls yesterday of 3 individuals I know that passed. So like I was saying earlier last week, my neighbor died. She was 46. She caught it from her daughter. Mm-hmm. Right. I had a first cousin, still young guy, 67. 2 weeks ago, he's on dialysis. Like you said, we have already a condition. He caught COVID. He passed yesterday, right? 2 other people I called, right? And the sad part, like when I'm looking at the New York Times, I have friends that are minorities all over, in the South, right? Midwest. They may have not been hit as hard yet. So when you look at the New York Times, they said 22% of the black people make up 22% of the population in New York, but represent 28% of the deaths of the virus. Hispanics make up 29% of the city, but represent 34% of deaths. Mm-hmm. So you see these inner cities like Chicago, New Orleans, they're getting hit, yes, right? Mm-hmm. But then they look at the cities and states like Washington State only has 4% of black people, right? Right. Then they talk about California. There's certain areas where they're not my majority black areas. So those areas aren't putting up the numbers like we have up in certain areas where inner cities and stuff like that. So that's why I think it's so important, like you mentioned, where to some, it's like life goes on, right? Everything is all, like I see posts sometimes online that's a little bit insensitive, because they don't see it for themselves. Mm-hmm. They don't think it's real, you know? And I could take a little slack from that myself, because even when the Hurricane Katrina thing went on in New Orleans, right? We're up here, up north. I'm in New Jersey, right? Oh, we still go to the movies. Everything is good. Them people down there are suffering and they can't get out. But that's a national disaster, right? But that's a specific location. Mm-hmm. Now we have a generation of people, right, that can spread, that can wipe out, not like the national disaster is over. Because I always think, and a buddy of mine brought it up, what if we do have another national disaster a flood or hurricane. We're done. Like, where can we all go shelter in together? We're supposed to be keeping a distance apart.
Well, yeah, I mean that's actually a good point. Yeah, I mean if and it's not what if, it's when. We will have another or a national disaster.
Exactly.
Be it an F5 tornado that tears across the midsection of the country. Be it because let's be honest, this pandemic is not over and won't be over for a while. If you look at projections, the projections are that this pandemic will kind of ease off as we get towards the end of May, beginning of June, but then it's going to come back. Because what is going to happen is until we reach that herd immunity that Boris Johnson was talking about, where most people have been exposed and have an antibody response, so they're immune to it, until we reach that point, we are going to, every time we kind of stop social distancing and start congregating movie theaters and concerts and in the grocery store, it's going to resurge. Now, each time it resurges, it's going to have a lower peak because more and more and more people will be immune to it, but it's going to resurge. And so, I was watching something that's kind of depressing, but they're saying this probably will be a part of our life in the next 2 years. Like we're going to be on lockdowns, we're going to be social distancing, we're going to be stay-at-home orders, then it'll get better. It'll kind of ease the burden on the health system. We'll go back to normal life for a few months. We'll have another peak, won't be as high as the first one. We're going to have to kind of do it all over again, So until the majority of people are immune to this virus, or until we have a vaccine, this is going to be part of our life for a while. We're going to have to, I really believe that this is going to kind of be a defining moment for our generation. It's going to be kind of like, the Great Depression was for that generation. Like it's going to be life before coronavirus and life after coronavirus. I was talking to my wife and I was joking, but I'm serious. Like I like to travel. Anytime I'm on a plane, probably for the next few years, I'm going to be wearing a mask. I may have gloves.
Right.
Like, I think this is going to change our generation for a while. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. But I think it's going to be something that we have with us for a while. And so we're going to have to learn how to bake coronavirus and other pandemics into the pie. And we're going to have to be able to live with coronavirus and a hurricane, or coronavirus and we're going to have to learn how to adapt, because it's going to be part of our life for a while. I think I really do.
And I think what bothers me too, like I'm an advocate of education and just understanding, it's just the processes you got to go through. So New York just canceled school for the rest of the year. Yep. And I know they're going to do that with New Jersey. Now, here we are, our people, now our children are relying on us now to educate them, even though you got the schools online and stuff like that, right? Now we have to take more time out of our time,
right,
from chasing money and whatever else we're trying to do and things like that. Because now when we had that responsibility more so on the professionals, and we appreciated the students, because a lot of, like, you hear a lot of life-changing things where people may have left the urban area and they went away to college, right? And they got in a new environment and they changed their life, right? But some of us now, we're stuck in that environment now again. Right? Not saying that's going to be a complete bad thing, but sometimes I know a lot of stuff that benefited me, I learned from having diversity,
right,
going around. So now you don't have no diversity. You still may be stuck where, you want to say something?
A big part of education is seeing the world beyond your world. It's a big part of education is seeing people and places and things and traditions beyond what you're exposed to, because human nature is such that our world is our world, and that's all we can conceive of. And if all you can conceive of is your world, you can't get beyond that. But when you are around people who are different, places that are different, traditions that are different, when you hear, it's funny, even as a physician, people look at us as physicians and say, you've made it, right? And it's so funny because in some people's eyes, I guess we've made it, right? But we are with people. We're working with people who are operating on a completely different level than we are. People who come from generational wealth, who come from parents and grandparents of grandparents who have money. And when we sit down and we talk about just finances and life and investment opportunities, I realize we are here and they are there.
It's
true. And it's so
true.
It's so eye-opening. I had a colleague who was talking about different investment opportunities, and I'm like, never heard of this? Never would have thought about it,
And don't have the money to put into it right now.
And don't have the money to put into it, like you're talking. It's like, oh, a minimum of this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so, and I would have never known about these things had I not gone beyond my world, my four walls, And so you're right. Being stuck at home is going to lessen the exposure that's so important to becoming a bigger, better, more influential person.
But I'm going to say that even with the discussion we're having right now is kind of a discussion that people, some standing in society can have. You know, when you look at the socioeconomic inequities that this virus is starting to highlight, yes, you're right. Some people may be at home and they don't have the benefit of going out there and seeing the great wide world, and that's horrible. But I've read stories of people that they're trying to homeschool without internet, you know, because there are people that don't have internet at home. They don't have a computer, and, you know, so they're talking about, oh, you know, it's horrible to homeschool my kids. And I'm sure I mean, my wife and I have been doing it for a while, so we're kind of used to it, you know, but it was rough when we first started doing it. But when you have a daily routine that you need to be doing, like you said, to make your money and to pay your bills, and you got to homeschool your kids, that makes things difficult. But we have to look at this also from the perspective of people that don't even have that. They don't have those benefits. They don't have internet. They don't have computers. They don't have parents. Maybe they have, you know, a single parent household where the parent is a frontline employee and they've got to be out working maybe double shifts now, you know? And so I think what this virus has also, you have to almost be blind not to see it, but what it has really shown a light on is the socioeconomic inequities that are baked into the pie of this country. You know, we don't have that social safety net. We don't have a setup where everybody has at least the same basic level or the same basic living standard, you know?
And I'll tell you what's scary for me too, and I'm sure you've thought of a lot more about this than we have, because, you know, you're more on the finance side of things. But, you know, we're going to slowly get back to normal life, slowly.
Correct. Yeah.
But I think that what a lot of companies are going to take out of this is they can do more with less. Because a lot of these companies are not only going to survive, but they're actually going to thrive, you know, and they're going to realize they can do more with less. And who's going to be on the chopping block first? It's going to be, unfortunately, it's going to be the minorities, you know. You're going to see more workers. Yeah. I mean, you're going to, even with our own practice, you know, obviously there's a lot of things that we can do now, you know, that we can do elective surgical procedures. We're really only seeing urgent patients in the office. And so, you know, our volume's down probably 50%, at least 50%, probably more. And so, you know, we had to go back on hours and this, that, and the other. And the funny thing is, you know, human beings are resilient. We always get by, you know. Now we're going to bring everybody back, and we're going to, you know, things, God willing, will be back as they once were. But I think a lot of companies are going to realize you can do more with less. And it's going to be very interesting to see how minorities bounce back from this. I don't know that you're going to see them called back to work as quickly as you would like. I don't know that you're going to see them given the same number of hours that they once were given. I kind of wonder what they're going to do with benefits, you know, because companies are now going to have this shield where they can say, well, you know, hey,
coronavirus.
Yeah, coronavirus, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, it's going to be really interesting to see, and I'm sure you've thought about it a lot more than we have. But I'll be very interested to see how people bounce back from this, and we know that minorities are going to be disproportionately affected. And
yeah, even like you mentioned, like your benefits package as a new employee now, you know, a lot of that stuff has changed. And that's what I was saying, like you just mentioned before. It's like we're at home, right? And we do have different households. So we may have multiple children. Yeah. Now you got to spend time with all of them now to make sure, like, we got to watch how much TV we watch how much stuff we're doing, because now it's like, is this like the Little House on the Prairie days? You know what I mean? Like, we got the farmers now, like, even though we up north, we got to have everybody sit back and study together, you know? And that's what you were saying, because there may be a point, and it's not gloom and doom. Like, for everybody watching, it's just reality of what we have to do to protect ourselves in our generation. Yeah. So it's like, what do we have to do to sacrifice in order to make that happen? Because everybody's right now is full of emotion. Everybody, like everyone I talk to or do, oh yeah, I may be losing my job. I may be doing this. I may be doing that. And you just react, you know, you react. So it's just one of those things that we have to always keep in mind. No matter what, we got to take care of our family right now. Yeah. So another question, what are some good preventative measures that we can always keep good practices on? We hear so many things as well.
You know what, see, this is, you know, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to beat the dead horse, because it's really the same things that you hear over and over again. first of all, hand hygiene is important all the time, okay? But it is very important in this day and age. So that means washing your hands almost to the point of being obsessive, because this is what they call a respiratory virus. So the reservoir where it lives is the nasal pharynx. So it's your nose, your mouth, your throat, your breathing tube. And so what happens is, you touch your hands to your nose, to your mouth, you bite your nails, whatever, and that's how it gets in. So you want to wash your hands obsessively. You really want to wear gloves. Now, I've got to tell a story. I'm not putting anybody on Front Street, but I saw somebody wearing gloves, and they clearly been wearing those same gloves all day. They were filthy. Like the fingertips were black. I mean, it was ridiculous. So I was like, when I say wearing gloves, I don't mean like put on the gloves in the morning, take them off at night. I mean, after you do any particular activity, change those gloves. Wash your hands. You want to wear gloves. You need to be wearing a mask now. That was kind of a common sense thing that the CDC hadn't really recommended until a week ago. But you need to be wearing a mask because this is a nasopharyngeal virus. So it comes out of your nose, comes out of your mouth. So by wearing a mask, you prevent you from spreading it to other people, but also goes into your nose, it goes into your mouth. So by wearing a mask, you prevent other people from spreading it to you. And then just that social distancing, because what people aren't getting, you hear people say this is like a cold or the flu. No, it's not. This is super, super virulent. It's almost like Ebola in the sense like, with Ebola, if you were around somebody that got Ebola, you had Ebola. Like there was no way around it. It's kind of like that. This virus is so virulent.
But I think it's important that people understand why, because, unfortunately, we as a society in general, and I think as minority societies in particular, and for good reason, we are prone to listening to conspiracy theories and nonsense and, oh, people are just trying to keep us down. This coronavirus isn't that big of a deal. No, it is. But it's important for people to understand why. It's what we call a novel virus. Now, we throw around these terms all the time. Novel virus. What does that mean? Well, what it means is it is novel. It is new to human beings. And so flu, cold, things like that can be problematic for people. Don't get me wrong. But we have, as human beings, been exposed to these viruses for eons. And so what ends up happening is the way that we fight things off is our immune system recognizes something and says, oh, it's the flu, oh, it's the cold, and it marshals its forces and it grabs it and it throws it out of your body, right? But it recognizes the virus, and that's how it mounts that response. When you have a novel virus, this thing gets into your body and the immune system's just like, what's that? Doesn't recognize it. And it takes a while for the immune system to say, oh no, this thing's a problem, and then it mounts that response. And so none of us have immunity to this. None of our bodies recognize it as being something problematic initially. And so that's why it is something that is so virulent, and that's why it's something that is so contagious, because if I have it, my immune system doesn't recognize it. I'm around him. Now he's got it. His immune system doesn't recognize it. We're around you. Now you've got it. Your immune system doesn't recognize it. Now, in coming generations, if it's something that we're exposed to time and time again, and you get that herd immunity where the majority of people are immune to it, even if it mutates itself a little bit, meaning it changes its clothes, our immune systems aren't dumb. They're like, that's COVID. It just changed its pants. I recognize you. I'm going to get you out of the body. But right now, our immune systems don't recognize it. This is a novel virus, and that's why it is so problematic, and that is why it is not like the flu, and that's why it's not like a cold. And I think it's just important people understand that. We're told that it's not nearly as big a deal as it is. No, it's a big deal. Right. And I think another thing, we were talking about the hand hygiene and the mask and social distancing, and all of that is important. But also for all people and for minorities in particular, be an advocate for yourself. If you have symptoms, if you have concerns, you need to relay those concerns to your physician, and you need to be persistent in your desire to be ideally tested and treated if you think that that's appropriate. Yeah. Unfortunately, because there's limitations in terms of resources, we are having to not turn people away, but not even pick and choose per se, but there are people, I've seen patients with bilateral pneumonias who under better circumstances would be in the hospital. But they're young, they're healthy, their oxygen saturation's okay. So it's kind of like, go home, take these medications. If it gets worse, come back, right? Just because there's only so many resources, But it's a lot easier to, in my opinion, because of subconscious bias, to send certain people home than it is to send other people home. Because the way subconscious bias works is, if I see you, you look kind of like my brother. So subconsciously, I care about you. I've got an affinity for you, But if you come in,
yeah, wow.
Yeah, but subconsciously, if you don't look anything like me, I don't have that subconscious affinity for you. And so it's easier for me to just kind of, push you off, So that's the way subconscious bias works. And so you have to really be an advocate for yourself. Also know what comorbid preconditions you have that may make you at higher risk. One thing is just about everybody with black or brown skin past the age of 35 to 40 has got hypertension, right? Why is hypertension such a risk factor for COVID? And if you have hypertension, should you be concerned about that? Well, yeah, you should be. You know, it's interesting. Most people who have hypertension are either going to be on what are called ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers, right? And these are two classes of antihypertensive medications that are used widely for everybody, and especially in African Americans, because they tend to be fairly effective in African Americans. And it looks like, and you know, research is still ongoing, so you can't say this definitively, but it looks like people with hypertension in general and people on these ACE inhibitors and these angiotensin receptor blockers, these ARBs in particular, are more susceptible to COVID. And it looks like they may be because, you know, COVID is a condition of the lungs, right? And you have these angiotensin receptors in your lungs that these medications work on. And it looks like the COVID virus uses these receptors to get into the lungs. And so when you're on ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers, your body makes more of these receptors. So there may be more of these receptors in your lungs to begin with. And so it's just like there's more doorways for the virus to use to get into the lungs, you know? And so know your conditions, know what medications you're on, and know potentially how they may make you more susceptible to the illness. Because at the end of the day, when you have to advocate for yourself, the best way to advocate for yourself is to be knowledgeable about the subject. And so if you say, A, I'm hypertensive, and I know that puts me at higher risk. B, I'm African American, and I know we're dying more, and that's gonna, you know, make their ears perk up right away. C, you know, I know that there's a lot of thought that these angiotensin receptors may be a pathway for this virus to get into my lungs. And D, I'm on an ACE inhibitor, or I'm on an angiotensin receptor blocker, so that puts me at higher risk. But now they're gonna listen to you because you know what the heck you're talking about. You can't be poo-pooed. And even if they don't subconsciously identify with you, they recognize that you're knowledgeable enough that you can advocate for yourself, and that if they don't take you seriously, that could be a problem for them.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense because you're right. It's just like if you know what you want and you know what you need, they're going to realize that, hey, this person is educated enough. Hey, I can't walk away from them because now, like you're saying, it almost makes your job a little bit easier because you know whatever they tell them, you tell them they're going to listen and follow up instead of just having a whole bunch of pills and say, he just told me or she told me to take this 2 a day and this one 3 a day. You know why you're taking it, with the ingredients, the side effects and things of that nature. That's an excellent point with that. Did you want to say something, Doc, as well?
Oh, no, I was just, I was going to kind of interject and he kind of went somewhere else. But what I was going to say was, you know, the patient I was talking about earlier that ultimately, you know, we 10 days later got a positive test for, this patient had been back and forth to the ER a few times, you know, and the first time they diagnosed it with bronchitis, and then with, you know, and so the point of the story was, like he was saying, like, be your own advocate, you know, testing is limited, you know, so we are somewhat, we can't just give everybody a test, you know, which means that people who should be tested under ideal, like with the flu, for example, you know, anybody we suspect may have the flu, we'll swab them because we got 1,000,001 flu swabs, we're not going to run out, you know, but with this COVID testing, we just still 2 months later, still don't have adequate resources. And so they will generally be, you know, they'll be sent away and you have bronchitis, you have an asthma exacerbation, you have this, you have that. If you get sicker, come back with the understanding that they may have COVID, but they'll probably get better, you know? So you just have to be your own advocate. And you know, if you really are not feeling well, or suspect that you are sick or you've been exposed or you're higher risk, really as much as you can try and insist on that testing. But the understanding that even if you get tested now, you still won't have that result for a week, week and a half. So,
although there are some places that are doing the rapid testing.
So they do have a rapid, but I was actually looking last night at the rapid testing. So Abbott Labs, which ironically enough, we're in the northern suburbs of Chicago, is like right down the road, like 10 minutes away. They've come up with a test that takes 5 minutes or less for positive results, 13 minutes or less for a negative result. So that's great because you can know on the spot, you're positive, you're negative, you're good to go. And so they're slowly rolling out this test. But I was looking last night, like they are still only available, I think, in like 7 or 8 states, and then a few locations in each state. So it's going to be a while.
But a lot of hospitals have devised their own testing as well. There are a few hospitals in our area that are giving us results in 10, 15 minutes. Not all of them. So it's possible to get the results a lot more quickly, but it depends.
But for the most part, it's still, the standard is still a good little wait.
So now let me ask you this question too, because up north we're still in the wintertime a little bit. What are some of the symptoms besides probably fever?
Yeah.
I know you say fever. I know it's everybody because like sometimes like I was mentioning before we was on with Dr. Kelly before, like, you know, I was working out, then like 2 days later my chest was hurting. You know, and I'm doing a breathe test. I'm a little sniffles, but it's cold up here. It's still like 46 degrees. And I'm like, oh, Lord, you know, I done got it. I don't know what happened, you know, because the paranoid effect. Is there really it's not the same for everyone? Because I know like a lot of people ask that question all the time. Yeah.
That is kind of what is so strange about this virus. Like, it is not the same for everybody. So if you look at the flu virus, if you look at a cold, I mean, it's going to present differently in different people, but there's some pretty standard hallmarks like bang, 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 bang. You probably have the flu, you know? With coronavirus, what is so odd about this is that some people have no symptoms. The majority of people probably have no symptoms. Whereas with the flu, you're gonna have some symptoms. You know, but a lot of people with coronavirus have no symptoms. Some have mild symptoms. Some have moderate symptoms. Some are severe and in the ICU intubated. You know, but some kind of standard things to look for. This is like we were talking about before. This is something that lives in the nose and the mouth. So it's what they call a nasopharyngeal virus. So you may have sore throat. Breathing issues, so that's shortness of breath, burning in the chest, fevers, that's plus or minus. But the ones you really want to look for are muscle pains, what they call myalgia. So people that have coronavirus are experiencing these strains, just like muscle pains or muscle spasms, muscle cramps. That's not something you're going to have with a regular cold. The more respiratory symptoms. So if you're having this shortness of breath, that's something that you're generally not going to have with a regular cold, cough. But what it is, it tends to be a dry cough. So when you have a cough with a cold, you're mucousy and phlegmy, whereas with this, it tends to be a dry cough. So I'm telling my patients, it's kind of my spiel at the end of every visit. If you're having any respiratory symptoms, so if you're having a dry cough especially, but cough in general, if you're having shortness of breath, if you're having burning or chest discomfort, definitely let us know. Again, if you're having any fevers, even without other symptoms, that still is a sign that you may be infected, so you need to let somebody know. And then the myalgias, the muscle pains. So those 5 things should kind of, tune you into the fact that you possibly could be infected. You need to at least reach out to your primary care doctor. You don't necessarily want to go to the ER if you have those symptoms. You want to call your primary care doc first, and they'll kind of triage you and let you know if you need to go or not.
All right. Another question too. I've heard, but I don't know for sure. There's people who have had it, then it actually went away. Did it actually go away? Are they cured, or it's still dormant, or they don't know? Because some people have been treated, then they say that they've been released. And
well, it's probably a combination of both. I mean, I think there are a lot of people out there who have had the coronavirus and been asymptomatic, meaning they had no symptoms and they never knew it, and now it's gone and they're no longer contagious and they're immune. You have other people who are probably in the end stages of it, who've had some what they thought were just generic cold symptoms, again, didn't realize they had it, and their immune system is slowly wiping it out, and they're getting better, but they may be symptomatic. And you probably have others who have been diagnosed, are being treated, but are still kind of early in the process and are still asymptomatic. And so kind of as a general rule of thumb, everybody's heard about the 14-day quarantine and so on and so forth. People ideally want to stay away from everyone else for 14 days after they've either been diagnosed or kind of reached the peak of their symptoms, right? And normally once you're more than 14 days from the time of diagnosis or 14 days from the peak of your symptoms, you're no longer contagious. Now, there have been some cases, and again, it's all so early and everything's so fluid and it's so hard to make any definitive statements about anything, but there have been some cases of people who have tested positive, been treated, subsequently tested negative, and then tested positive again. And that's because thus far there are 2 strains of it that we know. One is a little bit more virulent than the other. But like all viruses, like life itself will always survive. The virus will probably mutate in time, just like the flu virus does. Every year when we get the flu vaccine, they vaccinate us against the strains of the flu that they think are going to be most problematic. But it's not unheard of to get the flu vaccine and still get the flu, because there are different strains of it, and it mutates and it changes. And just like we want to survive and thrive, so too do viruses. And so they know that they've got to step up their game and switch it up a little bit if they want to survive and thrive. And that's what they do.
And I think part of it, because this is a novel virus, something we don't have a lot or really much of any experience with, we really still don't know the course of this. Like we're assuming it's like other viruses, and you get sick, you get better, you've got an immune response, you're good to go. But we don't know. We're not going to know until 6 months, a year, 2 years out.
It'd be very interesting to see. If you think of Zika, when there was the Zika thing a couple of years ago, no one knew initially when Zika was first discovered and first characterized that it had all of these long-term effects on babies in utero, and it wasn't until a year later, 2 years later, when they were retrospectively realizing, wait a minute, a lot of these pregnant women who had Zika now have microcephalic babies, and so it takes time and study and a lot of observation before we will really understand the full extent of what corona is and isn't. And so a lot of it's just kind of still out there, left to be determined.
And one thing I noticed with something like this, I was watching actually a video yesterday. Korea has something like this in 2015. I don't know if it's called Mars or something like that.
Yeah.
There was MERS and
MERS
SARS.
and SARS. Yeah, exactly. So there was SARS. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Huh?
No, like, and they were prepared for COVID.
So this.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Your thoughts.
This is the thing. Sorry, this is the thing. So this is not unexpected. Okay, this is not unexpected. Like I said, there was MERS, which was the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. There was SARS, which was the Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. But these are all coronaviruses, okay? Different types of coronaviruses, but all coronaviruses, all in the same family. I again, not getting political, but there was an actual CDC unit embedded in Wuhan, because Wuhan has been kind of a hotspot where this stuff keeps coming out of some reason, you know? And they were removed about, I think it was a year or two ago. But there were still, you know, we still have our fingers and things, you know? There were reports as early as November that something's starting in Wuhan and it's gonna be bad, you know? So yes, a lot of countries, America is this balance between capitalism and socialism. You know, they're socialists when they want to take our paychecks, or take money out of our paychecks every 2 weeks, but they're capitalists when it comes to providing services for the people. Like, no, let the free market do it, you know? But a lot of other countries understand the importance of government taking care of things that may not be profitable enough for the free market to do it, you know? So yeah, South Korea, for example, everybody's known that it's gonna, and we're gonna get another pandemic virus in a few years probably. It's gonna keep happening, you know. But a lot of countries are prepared for it, which is why South Korea is in a position where they can test everybody. They are literally testing symptomatic, asymptomatic, everybody, because they knew this was coming. They invested the money into the resources to prepare for this with the understanding that it's gonna happen. And now that it happened, they're ready. Hopefully America has learned a good lesson that you can't leave everything to the free market, because it's not going to be financially advantageous for somebody to get ready for this, you know. It's going to be something that government does. And so hopefully this will, if nothing else, get us ready for the next pandemic that will come, and we will be more ready for it.
But I think a part of that also is, you know, I think one of America's greatest strengths is also one of its greatest weaknesses, and that's our democracy, right? That's our certain level of freedoms. You know, certain countries, they say, this is a problem. We're not gonna let it become a bigger problem. Stay in your house. Do not come out of your house. End of story, full stop. Here, please don't. It's really important that you don't. Think of your grandma, you know, but nobody's literally saying stay in your house, you know, because we have freedoms, you know. And so, and sometimes those freedoms work to our disadvantage, because we're free to be stupid, and we're free to make stupid decisions, and we're free to harm ourselves and others, you know. And certain countries are like, stay in your house, end of story, full stop. You come out, you're going to jail. And they know. They're staying in the house, or they're coming out and they're going to jail, you know? And so I think that's also why it's a little bit easier for certain countries just to lock stuff up, because they're like, look, we're gonna lock this up. We don't care how you feel about it. It's done. You know, half of us aren't freely elected anyway, so you're mad at us. I don't care. You know, here, I got to get reelected. I don't want to piss off the constituents, you know, so I'm just going to beg them, please be smart. But a lot of us aren't smart when it comes to stuff like this, because we've got so much information out there, we're confused, you know? But yeah, like you said, you know, they've been preparing for things like this. And then culture is different as well. Even in the best of times, you go to a lot of countries in Asia, they wear masks, you know, they're very polite, they bow, they don't shake hands, you know. So they have a lot of habits to begin with that make contagious diseases a lot less problematic than we do.
Because I thought it was unique, which I probably can't ever see happen here in America, like you said, because our freedoms, which could be a gift and also sometimes a curse, where all the tests was out there and they just showed, even though they had 3,000, they had a lot, but then they showed the curve declining because they weren't on lockdown. Mm-hmm. They have like these apps and everything now. So what they put in law, like if you get tested positive, the government has the right to GPS where you were at, like your phone, pictures, or you on a cam on the street. So literally everyone in Korea has an app, like a Google Maps, to tell you where the hot zone's at. They could tell you where people were at with the COVID. So you could decide what train station not to go to, what store to avoid. Like the mapping function was just phenomenal of how they put that together. But I know, like you said, free market, how we are here, the difference between socialism and capitalism, but it was just, I see how they're trying to preserve the life on it, but they're being prepared. And like you said, I do believe, like you mentioned, there's going to be something again, because there's always got to be something in this generation, you know? So one question, go ahead, I'll let you go.
Oh, no, go ahead. Huh?
So now say they have a cure or some type of vaccination like they had in Korea during the MERS situation, where do we go from here in like from a medical standpoint of distribution, cost, things of that nature?
That's a great question, because again, it comes down to the question, to the role of government and the role of the free market. If this is a vaccine that can be marketed profitably, Pfizer, all of them are going to go ahead and do it, and it'll be in your doctor's offices in a month, and it'll be easy to get, you know. If this is a vaccine that isn't necessarily going to be profitable, then it's going to be a question of, is the government going to pay for this to be produced, mass produced? And is the government going to make this available to everybody? You know, one thing that, with one of the multiple packages that have been passed by Congress, anybody that is getting hospital care for COVID-19 related illnesses that are uninsured will be covered as though they have Medicare, okay? Which is good for the hospitals, because the hospitals are drowning financially, you know? And so, you know, sometimes government can step up and say, hey, we're going to take it on the chin financially for the you know, health and well-being of this country. So if the government were to step up and say, hey, we're going to mass produce this vaccine, we'll pay for it, we'll put it in doctors' offices, it's available, then I think that's what's going to happen. Because again, like we talked about earlier, I think coronavirus is it's going to keep coming back. It's going to keep coming back. It's going to keep coming back until the majority of people are immune to it. And the quickest way for that to happen is just to vaccinate people. If it is left up to the free market, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. It'll become a matter of, you know, if you have insurance, if you can afford your copay, if you can afford your co-insurance, if you can get in to see the doctor, you know, there'll be a lot of other factors come into play.
I do think though that, and who knows, but I do think that when all is said and done, the government's going to step up and make this available on a mass scale, strictly because it is in the country's best interest to do so. You know, the country has come to a grinding halt. I mean, like, well, you guys know we're in a recession, probably bordering on a depression if people are being realistic about what's happening in this financially, you know, and nobody, Democrat, Republican, Independent, or anything in between wants that. You know, it's not good for re-election, you know? And so I think that, you know, Republican or Democrat, nobody's going to call this socialism. They're just going to say it's in the best interest of the country to make sure that this doesn't happen again because our economy cannot collapse. And so I think that it's something that will probably be will be made available on a massive scale. And I'm hoping that everybody, anti-vaxxers included, will get vaccinated. Because I think that people have realized for the first time that, you know, being able to have a discussion about vaccines and how safe they are is a luxury. Yeah. You know, it's a luxury because it means that you're healthy enough to have that conversation. You know, you haven't, polio hasn't run rampant in your body. You know, you haven't died from, you named the bubonic plague, exactly. You know, it's a first world problem to be able to have this discussion about whether or not vaccines are safe or not, you know. And I'm hoping that after this, people will realize that viruses are alive, they are virulent, they can kill, and vaccines do more good than harm.
I think the one bright spot to this pandemic is, I think it's going to make those of us in America and Europe feel like we are human again. You know, usually we're seeing this in China, we're seeing this in Saudi Arabia. We're kind of like, oh, which is why it's gotten so bad here. Like, this has been on the radar for a while, but we're like, it's just another, what did the president say? Another Chinese virus is going to stay in China, you know? And I think now people realize like, like we are just as susceptible as everybody else. And if you look at our death rate, we're doing a lot better than, you know, percentage-wise in a lot of countries in Europe, but we're about the middle of the pack, you know? So America is an exceptional country, but American exceptionalism is not going to prevent you from getting a virus or from dying from a virus. So I think if anything, this is going to teach Americans like, hey, you know what? We're not immune. We have got to take this stuff seriously too.
Correct. So I got some questions. Somebody asked about zinc and what is it, quinine?
The hydrochloroquine, maybe, I don't know.
Correct. It's in the comments. What type of stuff can you use to help build anything for helping? Would that help out with the immune system?
Absolutely. Zinc is what we call a coenzyme, and so it helps enzymes that play a role in boosting immunity. So yeah, zinc, vitamin C, echinacea. These are all things that help to boost the immune system, and in particular, the parts of the immune system that are very good at fighting viruses. And so, yes, zinc for sure. Unfortunately, I can't see the comments, but I don't know if they're
I'm just trying to find them now. Sorry.
Okay. Ahead, yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So I don't know if they were talking about hydroxychloroquine or let's see. Here we go.
Quinine. So they're all. Oh, and somebody's talking about hydroxychloroquine here as well. So these are medical. So you know, I actually was reading a study this morning. So they have found that in a controlled study, because there are people that have actually killed themselves just taking these medications over the counter. In a controlled study, they found that for people that have severe COVID-19 related illness, 2/3 of people who received hydroxychloroquine actually did well. So the research is promising. But it's still in the research phase. There are actually people that have killed themselves taking this medication to either treat what they thought was COVID-19 or prevent themselves from getting it. So don't do that yet. But the research is promising.
And we have some patients actually at our hospital now that I've been following that are actually being treated with hydroxychloroquine if you're sick enough. But what people need to understand about that is, and it's a disclaimer that you hear and it sounds generic, but it's true. Don't do it yourself. Let a doctor decide, because there are people that it's appropriate in and people it's not. The way that this medication works is it actually suppresses your immune system. Mm-hmm. So if you're taking hydroxychloroquine to protect yourself, like preventatively, you made yourself more susceptible because you depressed your immune system, and now the virus is more likely to cause an infection. Hydroxychloroquine is helpful in people who already have it and whose immune systems have overreacted. Because a lot of times when people die from this, it's because their immune system has gone into overdrive and it's producing so many things to fight this infection that the things that it's producing are actually causing the lungs not to work properly, and they're damaging the liver and the kidneys and things like that. And so you've gotten too sick from it, and now we need your immune system to back off. But if you're not sick, you don't need your immune system to back off. You need it
to be up and running, and
yeah. So it can be helpful, but it's helpful in the right patient, and that's
the right condition.
Yeah, the doctor's got to decide. If you're getting hydroxychloroquine, you're already pretty sick. It's not something to prevent the disease.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody asked the question that they can't they have lupus, they can't get it. So what are some ways to help self-care if you can't get the your medication?
So, well, yeah, that's a hard one. And so that's actually one of the unintended consequences of people taking hydroxychloroquine and these medications to cure a disease they may not even have. It's not available for people who need it. I mean, the best advice I can give you in that case would be to reach out to your doctor, reach out to your rheumatologist, and see what other options they can prescribe that are not in high demand right now, because you still absolutely need to treat your lupus, because that is a pre-existing condition. That is a comorbid condition that puts you at a higher risk for COVID-19 and complications related to that. So absolutely talk to your rheumatologist and see what else they can make available to you, until people stop trying to.
Your local health department may be able to help as well. Contact your local health department, see if they maybe are able to help you secure some of these medications that are kind of in short supply now because people are using them inappropriately.
Yeah.
One question too was, if you did have a pre-existing condition,
mm-hmm.
and you passed because of COVID-19, is that the reason why you passed? That's what they're putting on the certificates?
I think that's what they're putting on the death certificate, because let's be honest, most of the people that are dying of COVID-19, most, not all, but most are older, and they do tend to have pre-existing conditions. But it's the COVID-19 is the actual cause of death. They were more likely to succumb to it because of their pre-existing conditions, but they've actually died of COVID-19 related illness. So what they usually put on the death certificate is like bilateral pneumonia, secondary to COVID-19, or COVID-19 related illness, or something like that. But it will be on the death certificate if they know for sure that you were positive.
Okay. So any symptoms that you do have, like somebody mentioned tickle in the throat, things of that nature, you will call your doctor ahead of time, or is there a way where you're like, okay, now it's a good time to call?
I always tell people, if in doubt, just call. That's what we're there for, But, I tell people, just because coronavirus is here, it doesn't mean that the common cold has ceased to exist. It doesn't mean that, flu A and flu B have ceased to exist. Or that seasonal allergies have ceased to exist. So you may still have, those typical common cold allergy symptoms. What I tell people is, if it feels like your cold always feels, if it feels like your allergies feel, then it's probably a cold or your allergies, The tip-off should be if you feel different than you normally do. Like for myself, when I get a cold, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen from the start to finish. I know my body, You should know your body. If this feels like your colds feel, if this feels like your allergies feel, don't worry about it. But if this is atypical, so if you're feeling symptoms that you don't normally feel, if you're feeling these muscle aches, if you're having fevers, if you're having a dry cough, which is a big way to discriminate from this versus a cold or the flu. If you're having those respiratory symptoms, those are the big reasons to call your doctor. But if in general, if you're just concerned and you're not sure, it's always better to just call, and it's better safe than sorry.
Great. No, that's great. I appreciate that. Listen, I mean, it's been an hour, guys, and we appreciate you guys so much. Listen, we definitely want to have you back soon, guys. Please go follow them all on social media. Twin TV. Anything else you want to mention about where they can see you at or contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're in the Chicagoland area, once life gets back to normal. You can always check us out on ABC 7 Chicago, Windy City Live once a month, and on Fox 32 News at Noon once a month when we do a little medical segment. And then nationally, pretty much it's Twin Doctors TV for everything. All of our social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, is Twin Doctors TV. Also, we recently completed a book, nothing related to COVID. It's only going to probably be interesting to half of the population, but it's everything you ever wanted to know about pregnancy, but we're too embarrassed to ask. We have that book as well. So,
and we're in the northern suburb. We're taking new patients.
What's the link to the book? What's the link to the book?
You know what? I'll put it in there. It's available on Amazon, both in print and digital versions. But I'll go ahead and I'll put a quick link up there.
Yeah, but it's everything you ever wanted to know about pregnancy, but we're too embarrassed to ask. It's kind of like the 21st century.
What to expect or you're expecting.
21st century version of what to expect when you're expecting. Yeah. But other than that, Twin Doctors TV.
Okay.
All right.
So we told everybody. Everybody, we gave you out the Zoom ID. So we're gonna buy the book for everybody that's on Zoom now.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much.
We're gonna purchase that book for everybody that came on Zoom. We gave you the Zoom link. We got a lot of people on Facebook as well. So we're gonna purchase the book for you guys. Make sure that everybody follows you. We do appreciate everything that you guys are doing right now. We definitely do appreciate it. One more important thing, like I like to mention to everybody, like we try to reach out to as many doctors as possible to give us this information here. And the fact that you guys gave up your time is even more important just to us in general, because we don't know everything, and generation is everything. Generation is everything. And the fact that you guys spent all that time getting educated and doing what you got to do, not everybody can do that. You know, not everyone can do that. So it's just like much respect. And we salute you and what you're doing, because we know everybody cannot do that, man. And like, I'm sitting back like, geez, like, you know, in order for you to make those accomplishments, I don't want to let it go unnoticed amongst our community at all. Like when I went on, you guys could follow also blackdoctors.org, and I saw you guys speaking there, and I was like, wow, you know what I mean? And it's just like, what can I do to try to help out our community more? Because even though I'm in a hot zone, it's that our community spreads so wide and it's so tight at the same time. Because the fact that, you know, when I reached out to Dr. Kelly, y'all all know each other. Dr. Renee, it's like y'all community is tight, just like how we are in the finance world amongst like Black traders and investors. Our community is very tight. So you may know one, hopefully you may know the other. So it's just like, you know, I'm trying to combine these communities just for education, for everybody could just expand and know each other. Because at the end of the day, our lineage is going to move to the next generation, you know? And if we can't move, we got to move together.
That's right. And I think you put it best when you said health and wealth. If we don't have health and if we don't have wealth,
what's the point?
We have
health is not about wealth. Wealth is not about health.
Exactly. So man,
thanks for doing
you guys.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it so much, guys. I'm gonna put the link on our page. This is gonna be on YouTube. Please follow them. Also follow us on Instagram, everywhere. Everybody on Zoom, of course, we're sending out the book, The Keys to Stock Market Success. We'll send you one too. We have a nice ebook with that. But guys, you have to follow. Please follow and like their pages. Like their pages, and support the book. Support the book as well. You know, I know some guys on here too. Even if we want to get the book anyway, you just give it to whoever you need. You know,
right. Give it to the person you got pregnant.
You never know, right? All right, guys. We just like to, like we usually say, education, application, success. But our new thing right now is health, education, application, success. That's what we need to do. And the light that we're living in right now. So we like to say, have a great Saturday, man. We talk to you soon. All right, doctors. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.